I want you to just take a moment right now and try to visualize the sheer audacity of the blueprint we are laying out today.
It is incredibly ambitious.
It really is. So it is Monday, May 18th, 2026, and we are examining the strategic manifesto that completely abandons the whole idea of, predicting the future of business.
Right. There are no predictions here.
Exactly. Instead, it offers this highly specific, basically a tactical manual to actively engineer the future. We are looking at a document outlining the Grand Solara Vision.
The Grand Solara Vision, yeah.
Right, which is this hyper-detailed 10-year roadmap to manifest a trillion-dollar AI marketing powerhouse out of literally thin air.
And, the mechanism for doing that is what makes this document so disruptive.
Oh, for sure.
Because the default Silicon Valley playbook for building a monopoly is, well, it's just brute force capital, right? You raise billions and you ruthlessly acquire your competitors.
You just buy everyone out.
Exactly. But this manifesto proposes the exact opposite. It outlines a decentralized, collective merger of around 100 specialized tech startups.
100 startups.
Yeah, 100. It's an attempt to build a monolithic empire, but without a monolithic buyer.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are dissecting a massive blog post, which is effectively a manifesto, and it's authored by Paramendra Bhagat.
It's quite a read.
It really is. And it operates on like 3 levels simultaneously. It's a macro business strategy, it's a radical new equity framework, and it is a direct operational call to action for startup founders reading it right now.
Which is such a unique combination of intents for one piece of writing.
Totally.
Really?
And the premise driving all of this is a tectonic shift in the economy. Because I want you to think about your own company, or any company really. What is the biggest, messiest expense? It's almost always marketing.
Customer acquisition.
Right. And this isn't about AI writing slightly better email subject lines. This is about AI becoming the foundational, invisible infrastructure of global demand generation.
Because the author is recognizing that marketing has reached the absolute limit of human scaling.
What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, historically, growth has been bottlenecked by this incredibly messy artisanal combination of creative ideation and manual execution.
Oh, the friction is just awful.
Right. You have a team brainstorm a campaign, another team designs the assets, another formats them for like 50 different aspect ratios across various platforms.
Then someone else monitors the dashboard.
Exactly, and someone else manually adjusts the bids. The friction is immense.
It's just entirely labor intensive.
And the Grand Solara Vision operates on the thesis that this entire labor-intensive ecosystem is currently collapsing into a self-optimizing autonomous machine.
Right. Okay, think of what Amazon Web Services did for software development.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Before AWS, if you wanted to launch a tech product, you had to physically buy servers. You had to rent a room, wire the racks, install the cooling systems.
It took months before you wrote a line of code that mattered.
Exactly. You had to build your own physical infrastructure before you could even test your actual product idea. It was a massive capital and labor barrier.
And the Grand Solara Vision is arguing that AI is doing the exact same thing to marketing right now.
Yes. They aren't trying to build an ad agency. They are trying to build the AWS of demand generation.
An autonomous marketing infrastructure.
An AMI, right. You just plug your product in, and the machine handles the entire life cycle of customer acquisition.
But here's the thing. Building that level of infrastructure requires a completely new approach to corporate architecture.
Right, because you can't just build that in a garage.
No, you can't. And if an incumbent, like say Google or Salesforce, wanted to build this autonomous marketing infrastructure, they would just rely on the traditional M&A playbook.
Mergers and acquisitions.
Exactly. They would buy up dozens of AI startups, force them under one corporate umbrella, and inevitably destroy massive amounts of value in the process.
Oh, because traditional integration is an absolute nightmare.
That's the worst.
You have immediate culture clashes, legacy code bases that just refuse to talk to each other. And then you have the whole rest and vest problem.
Yes, the golden handcuff.
Right. The founders of the acquired companies lose their autonomy, their incentives misalign, and they just bide their time until their stock vests so they can leave and go sit on a beach.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is how the Solara approach attempts to bypass integration hell entirely.
By not buying them.
Right. By proposing a coordinated merger where participating companies integrate via shared equity rather than a cash buyout, the founders remain stakeholders.
So nobody is actually cashing out.
Nobody's cashing out. They are rolling their equity into a collective constellation. The goal is to preserve the rapid shipping velocity of a nimble startup while immediately capturing the network effects of a massive enterprise.
Which sounds great on paper, but, you can't just throw 100 distinct companies into a Slack group chat and declare yourselves a trillion-dollar entity.
No, you definitely need a core.
An infrastructure that massive requires an anchor. You need a centralized engine that drives immediate value to basically pull the other pieces into its orbit.
And the manifesto explicitly designates that anchor.
Yes, a Y Combinator company from the P26 batch called Tday.
Tday, yeah, which actually evolved from an earlier iteration called Markup.1.
Right.
They are positioned as the creative core of the initial merger. They are the linchpin because they solve the most stubborn bottleneck in the current AI landscape, which is the generation of usable, enterprise-grade creative assets.
Okay, we really have to clarify what makes them distinct here, because the market is flooded with AI image generation right now.
Anyone can do it.
Literally anyone. You can open an app and generate a highly detailed, photorealistic image of a cat in a spacesuit in 5 seconds.
But the manifesto draws a hard line between consumer-grade novelty and enterprise utility.
It's the last mile problem of AI creative, isn't it?
Exactly. Generic generation models, they produce flattened, uneditable pixels. The author actually accurately describes them as pretty but unusable blobs.
Unusable blobs, that's so true.
Because if you are running a global campaign for a Fortune 500 brand, a hallucinated JPEG is worthless. You can't change the font. You can't adjust the logo placement.
You need assets that strictly adhere to your brand guidelines, your exact typography, your specific hex codes, your vector layers.
And Tday's infrastructure is designed to output natively editable, brand-consistent marketing designs and videos.
Oh, so you can actually tweak them.
Exactly. They generate assets that a professional marketing team can actually open up, manipulate, and deploy without starting from scratch.
Okay, but this is where I have to look at the market realities and push back a little bit.
Sure.
If programmatic, editable, brand-safe generation is the key to this entire trillion-dollar vision, why doesn't Adobe or Canva just build it?
That is the obvious question, yeah.
I mean, they have the distribution, they have billions in capital, and they already have the existing enterprise relationships. Why wouldn't they just replicate Tday's feature set and crush them before this merger even gets off the ground?
Well, the author explicitly anticipates that threat. An isolated startup, no matter how brilliant its feature set is highly vulnerable to an incumbent just bundling that exact feature into an existing suite.
Right, Microsoft does it all the time.
Exactly. So the defense against Adobe or Canva doesn't lie in Tday's isolated technology.
Yeah.
It lies entirely in the structure of the Solara Alliance.
Because the alliance creates an immediate proprietary feedback loop.
Precisely. Think about how Tesla's autopilot works.
Okay.
Every single Tesla on the road is constantly driving data back into a centralized model, which makes every other car smarter.
Right, shadow mode.
Yes. The Solara strategy applies that exact mechanism to marketing. By combining Tday's generative engine with the shared data pool, the talent, and the unified go-to-market strategy of the other 99 merged startups, they engineer a closed-loop data moat.
Wow, okay, so every piece of creative generated by Tday is deployed by another Solara company.
Yes.
Optimized by a third company.
Exactly.
And the performance data from that deployment is fed right back to retrain Tday's models.
Adobe might have the distribution, sure. But they do not have a vertically integrated autonomous network of distinct companies constantly feeding cross-platform performance data into a single generative core.
It's an ecosystem-level advantage.
It is.
And the manifesto stresses that pulling this off requires a very specific type of founder psychology. It highlights Tday's founder, Shyam Shrestha.
Yes, his background is really interesting.
It maps his trajectory from Nepal to Adelaide in Australia, and then to San Francisco. And there's a specific phrase used to describe his mindset in the document.
Well-informed optimism.
Well-informed optimism, exactly. It's a direct reference to Paul Graham's philosophy at Y Combinator.
It's the cognitive dissonance required to build an empire, really.
Yeah, you need this reality-bending ambition, but it has to be ruthlessly calibrated to the actual constraints of the market and the technology in 2026.
You need a founder who understands that their company is just the engine block.
Right.
Tday generates the pristine, brand-perfect assets, but an engine sitting on a wooden pallet goes nowhere. You need the chassis, you need the navigation system, and you need the wheels.
Which means we need to look at the broader curation of this 100-company constellation.
We do.
So the manifesto provides a highly specific directory of Y Combinator companies.
It's quite a list.
It heavily indexes on the recent 2024 to 2026 batches. These are the explicit candidates targeted for the merger.
And if Tday is the core, we should explore how the other functions map out.
Let's start with the rest of the creative generation and video layer, because Tday isn't alone in content creation. The document singles out a company called Absurd from the F25 batch.
Absurd, yeah. They operate on multi-agent orchestration.
To build production-quality video ads in 72 hours for brands like Hims and Brex.
Which is wild. Multi-agent orchestration is a critical leap in how we build software today.
Break that down for us. What does that actually look like?
So it's not just one AI model generating a script. It is an autonomous pipeline where distinct AI agents, so one acting as the creative director, one acting as the copywriter, one as the video editor, they actually communicate with each other.
So they're like digital employees having a meeting.
Basically, yes. They critique each other's work, and they pass structured data back and forth to refine a final product.
That is fascinating.
Absurd is using this to compress what used to be a 3-month, million-dollar agency shoot into a 3-day autonomous process for major brands.
And right alongside them is Bluma.
Bluma, also F25.
Yes, also F25. And they take a much more aggressive approach.
Aggressive is the right word.
They are an AI short-form content engine that explicitly clones competitor viral videos.
We aren't just talking about generating original content anymore.
No. We're talking about ingesting a competitor's high-performing TikTok video, using AI to run a frame-by-frame sentiment analysis, reverse engineering the exact psychological hook, and then automatically generating a derivative asset for your own brand.
It's the weaponization of attention.
It really is. It feels almost unfair.
But once you have this industrial scale asset generation running, so Tday, Absurd, Bluma, you hit a new bottleneck.
Deployment.
Exactly, deployment. Humans cannot manually traffic thousands of AI-generated assets across dozens of platforms effectively. It's just impossible.
You would need 1,000 interns.
Right. You need an orchestration layer to manage the chaos.
Which brings us to the brand and campaign orchestration companies. The text points to Character Quilt from the P26 batch.
It describes them as the central nervous system of this whole operation.
Character Quilt doesn't actually replace your existing software, right? It acts as an intelligent overlay.
Yes. It ingests your brand identity and then deploys agents directly into your existing infrastructure. So into your HubSpot, your LinkedIn, your Meta Ads Manager.
It acts as the intelligent routing layer.
But the ultimate expression of this orchestration is a company called Upplane.
Oh, Upplane.
The manifesto positions Upplane as a literal replacement for the traditional growth agency.
Which is terrifying if you run an agency.
Absolutely terrifying, because it doesn't just route assets, it actively steers capital.
Okay, wait, how?
It takes the hundreds of ads generated by the creative layer, deploys them, and then autonomously shifts your ad spend across Google and Meta based on your internal CRM data to maximize return on ad spend.
So Upplane is effectively an algorithmic hedge fund.
That's a great way to put it.
But instead of trading equities, it's trading ad inventory.
Precisely.
But, for an algorithm to allocate capital efficiently, it needs predictive intelligence. It needs to know why an ad is working, not just that it generated a click yesterday.
And that requires an incredibly sophisticated analytics and simulation layer.
Which is the next part of the constellation.
Right. This is where the Solara flywheel really distances itself from traditional marketing. The manifesto highlights GetCrux, which acts as an AI creative strategist. It parses the actual creative variables. So did the video start with a question? Was the lighting warm or cool? What specific phrasing triggered the conversion?
Oh, so it's looking at the metadata of the video itself.
Exactly. And it maps those variables to drive down acquisition costs over time.
But analyzing past performance is still inherently reactive.
Yes.
The real magic trick in this manifesto is Oxos.
Oxos is unbelievable.
Also from the P26 batch, this absolutely blew my mind when I read it. Oxos utilizes simulated audiences.
Simulated audiences.
They are creating digital twins of buyer personas. Instead of running a costly A/B test on Facebook to see if a hook works and wasting real money, Oxos allows you to test that hook against a matrix of synthetic personas.
Driven by large language models that are trained on real behavioral data.
Right. So you run a massive Monte Carlo simulation on your ad copy before a single dollar of actual ad spend is deployed.
It is brilliant.
It's like having a digital full matrix of consumers you can test your ads on. You are effectively focus grouping your creative against the digital equivalent of 1 million consumers in real time.
It fundamentally de-risks capital allocation. Cool. And while you are optimizing paid acquisition, you also have to dominate organic visibility.
Which leads to the massive shift the author notes from traditional SEO to GEO.
Generative engine optimization.
This is the battlefield for the next decade of search.
Without a doubt.
Because consumers are bypassing Google's blue links entirely. They are just asking Perplexity or ChatGPT directly for product recommendations.
And traditional PageRank SEO, stuffing keywords and building hundreds of backlinks is completely useless in this new paradigm.
It does nothing.
Yep.
You have to optimize for how an LLM retrieves and synthesizes context.
And the manifesto drafts companies like Athena HQ, Rankai, and the Prompting Company specifically to build this GEO mode.
What do they actually do?
Their technology ensures that when a user asks an AI agent a question, the Solara network's products and narratives are mathematically favored in the generation.
They are engineering entity resolution within the models themselves. If we connect this to the bigger picture, when you look at these disparate companies together, you see the actual architecture of the autonomous marketing infrastructure.
It's a closed-loop system.
Exactly. Tday and Absurd generate the raw assets. Character Quilt and Uplane personalize and deploy those assets at scale. GetCrux measures the creative efficacy. Oxos runs the predictive simulations for the next iteration, and Athena HQ ensures organic retrieval.
And crucially, every single interaction generates proprietary performance data,
which flows back to the start of the loop.
Retraining the models to be sharper for the next cycle. It is a perpetual motion machine for customer acquisition.
But, and the author acknowledges this, architecting a theoretical flywheel is vastly different from operationalizing a 100-company mega merger.
Oh, the friction of actually building this would be staggering.
It's astronomical. You can't execute this overnight. It requires a meticulous sequencing of events, which the manifesto lays out in a highly structured 10-year roadmap.
It's a decade-long play.
Let's examine the logistics of this timeline, because this is where the theoretical meets the brutal reality of execution.
Right.
The roadmap is divided into 5 phases. Phase 1 and 2 represent the first 4 years, and they are entirely focused on flywheel formation and go-to-market expansion.
So year 1 and 2 are the alpha stage.
Okay.
This is about taking the first 10 core companies, the anchors we just discussed, and proving basic interoperability.
So not even making money yet, necessarily.
The goal isn't massive revenue yet, no. It's targeting a modest $10 million to $50 million in multi-tenant revenue.
Which is nothing for 10 companies combined.
Right. The actual metric for success here is purely technical. Can Tday's generative API seamlessly hand off an asset to Uplane's deployment API without human intervention?
Can they actually launch a unified marketing OS?
Yes. And if they prove interoperability, they move to phase 2, which covers years 3 and 4.
This is the expansion phase.
They transition from offering a modular suite of separate tools to a truly integrated platform. And they're targeting the top 50 global brands to secure massive, stable data flows.
And the financial leap here is incredibly aggressive. They project jumping to between $200 million and $600 million in ARR.
Scaling a decentralized entity to $600 million ARR in 4 years requires flawless execution.
I mean, it borders on impossible.
It does. But it's the necessary foundation for the real inflection point, which is phases 3 and 4, covering years 5 through 8.
The standardization era.
Right.
So phase 3 is when they project crossing the $1 billion ARR threshold,
which is unicorn revenue status.
But the financial milestone is almost secondary to the strategic one here. The goal in phase 3 is to establish autonomous marketing infrastructure, AMI, as a recognized product category.
They want AMI to be as ubiquitous a term as CRM or ERP.
They are aiming to establish a global data commons, effectively standardizing the APIs for how AI models interact with marketing data globally.
Because by defining the category, they set the rules of engagement for the entire industry.
Everyone else has to play by their rules.
Exactly. And then phase 4 is about locking in that ecosystem. They plan to expand laterally, moving beyond pure marketing into adjacent workflows.
So integrating with sales forecasting models.
Automating customer support loops, tying directly into supply chain data. And they project hitting $5 billion plus in ARR, targeting 70% or more enterprise adoption in specific verticals.
Think about that. If you hit 70% enterprise adoption, you aren't just a software provider anymore.
No, you are a utility.
You are the power grid for global commerce.
Which sets up the final destination, Phase 5, covering years 9 and 10. The manifesto calls this the Solara Sun era.
The projections here are staggering. I mean, the author envisions the entity generating between 25 billion and 60 billion in ARR.
At that point, they aren't just selling software access.
What are they doing?
They are monetizing the nodes of the ecosystem itself. They are charging for API access to their proprietary data commons and taxing the marketplace of AI agents they host.
And they are projecting a $1 trillion ecosystem valuation by year 10. I want you, the listener, to truly process the scale of that claim. There are only a handful of trillion-dollar companies on Earth.
Apple, Microsoft, Amazon.
Right. And we are looking at a highly public, step-by-step manual attempting to manufacture the next massive global tech monopoly from scratch in exactly 120 months.
And doing it entirely through the orchestration of independent, fast-moving Y Combinator startups.
But this is where the entire vision threatens to collapse under the weight of, honestly, human psychology.
Right, is the biggest risk.
Let's inject some operational reality into this. If I am the founder of Uplane or Oxos or Tday, I'm already sitting on a rocket ship.
You're doing very well.
I have elite backing from Y Combinator. I have immense viral traction. I likely have venture capitalists actively throwing term sheets at me every single day.
They were begging to give you money.
Why in the world would I voluntarily surrender my autonomy to join this collective? How do you mathematically and psychologically convince 100 fiercely independent, ego-driven founders to share control of a single entity?
That is the existential hurdle of the Solara Vision.
Yeah.
And the author attempts to solve it through a mechanism they call engineering equity.
Engineering equity.
Because a traditional acquisition relies on a buyout price, a lump sum of cash or stock that effectively ends the founder's journey.
Right, you get your check and you leave.
But the Solara framework completely abandons that model in favor of the 30-30-30-10 split.
Which is a wild equity structure.
It's designed to fundamentally align incentives and enforce continuous collaboration.
Let's break down the mechanics of this 30-30-30-10 distribution, because it's a fascinating piece of game theory.
It really is.
Yeah.
So the first 30% represents the founder's core equity.
Okay, that makes sense.
This honors their original creation, the technology they built, and the initial traction they brought to the table. It secures their baseline ownership in the new mega entity.
Then the second 30% is allocated for team retention and performance equity.
Which is vital, because acquiring technology is useless if the human capital evaporates.
You need a massive pool of equity to ensure the elite engineers and machine learning researchers who actually built the tools stay through the transition.
You don't want them immediately defecting to OpenAI or Anthropic.
Exactly. So that accounts for 60% of the pie.
But the true innovation lies in the third tranche, the 30% moat growth and strategic contribution pool.
The moat growth pool.
Yes. This is dynamic equity. It is not granted up front. It is continuously earned based on a company's ongoing contribution to the collective.
And then the final 10% is allocated for venture and ecosystem incentives.
Right, ensuring the early VCs and strategic partners who back these startups remain aligned and motivated to support the combined entity rather than forcing early exits.
This raises an important question, though. The 30% moat growth pool, that is the psychological linchpin, right?
It absolutely is. It directly addresses the rest invest problem.
Because in a traditional merger, a founder might secure their payout and immediately lose their edge.
They coast. They buy a vineyard.
Right. But the Solara structure gamifies the post-merger environment. If a founder wants to maximize their wealth, their baseline 30% isn't enough.
They are structurally incentivized to aggressively push their specific node to contribute more data, more users, and more revenue to the shared ecosystem.
They are literally competing to expand the collective moat.
It effectively weaponizes their ambition for the benefit of the whole. It rewards long-term, sustainable execution over the quick dopamine hit of a traditional exit.
But I still have to question the behavioral feasibility here.
You're skeptical.
Very. I mean, the math is incredibly elegant on paper, but startup founders are notoriously protective of their fiefdoms.
They have massive egos.
Yes, huge egos. They are building companies because they want to be the singular visionary on the magazine cover, not node manager 47 of a collective son.
Right.
How do you execute this level of coordination without the entire thing imploding into a massive ego-driven civil war on day one?
The author is acutely aware of that. They know that legal frameworks cannot solve ego.
They definitely can't.
If you try to force 100 Type A founders into a room with their respective legal teams to hash out an unprecedented 100-way merger,
Oh, it would be a disaster.
the deal will die in a mountain of red lines and posturing before the first signature is ever inked.
So how do they avoid that?
The manifesto solution is an execution strategy that deliberately subverts traditional corporate bureaucracy. The merger is initiated through extreme informality.
It is the most jarring part of the entire document. Step 1 of the Solara Vision explicitly demands the removal of lawyers from the initial process.
The lawyers allowed.
The text literally reads, "The merger cannot begin with lawyers, it must begin with founders."
It's a bold statement.
And the author outlines an escalation ladder. It's a specific low-friction sequence for these startups to begin courting each other. And it starts with a simple Twitter DM.
A DM. Because a DM carries no legal weight.
None at all.
It bypasses the defensive posture that founders adopt when dealing with term sheets. It is purely an exploratory signal of intent.
The author even provides the exact template for the DM to Paramendra Bhagat. It's almost aggressively casual.
What does it say?
It says, "Hi, Paramendra. Just read the Grand Solara Vision article. I run blank company. I think the collective merger idea is serious. Would love to discuss how we might align. Can we do a quick call?"
It reduces the activation energy required to start a trillion-dollar conversation to absolute zero.
Just copy and paste.
And from that initial DM, the escalation ladder moves to step 2, which is a brief phone call to establish baseline alignment.
Then step 3, where structured emails are exchanged, sharing vision drafts and operational notes.
Step 4 is where the network effects of the alliance really begin to form. They move to group chats across WhatsApp, Signal, or Slack.
You are placing these elite founders in direct, unfiltered contact with each other, completely outside the purview of their boards or legal counsel.
They begin building a shared operational vocabulary.
And finally, step 5 is the mandate for in-person meetings. The author emphasizes breaking bread.
Breaking bread, yes.
The text specifically states that physical meetings create emotional reality.
Emotional reality is the critical variable here. In the current paradigm of AI development, speed is the ultimate defensive mode.
Right.
Lawyers are incredibly efficient at drafting defensive documents, but they cannot draft trust.
That's a great point.
And without deep interpersonal trust, a decentralized ecosystem cannot move fast enough to survive. The author is arguing that if founders remain isolated in their silos, paralyzed by the fear of losing control, they will be outmaneuvered by the massive capital and distribution of big tech incumbents.
It requires a massive paradigm shift in how we value technology. The manifesto is suggesting that the specific AI software these companies are building is rapidly becoming commoditized.
The code itself isn't the mode anymore.
Exactly. The actual defensible product isn't the code. The product is the alliance itself. The speed and trust of the network is the only thing that cannot be easily cloned.
And that realization demands an evolution in founder psychology. At the end of the manifesto, the author provides a highly curated reading list.
Yeah, let's talk about that reading list.
It includes titles like Verbal Martial Arts, Social Concentric Circles, and Non-Reaction, alongside 100 questions that lead to understanding.
These aren't business strategy books.
Not at all.
They are frameworks for emotional regulation.
Precisely. The author is prescribing an operating system upgrade for the founders themselves.
For their brains.
Yes. To successfully navigate a 100-company collective without succumbing to infighting, leaders must learn the discipline of non-reaction.
They have to strip away the reflex to defend their ego.
Abandon the illusion of absolute control and adopt a highly empathetic, networked mindset.
Because the technological integration of 100 APIs is mathematically solvable. We can do that today.
But the psychological integration of 100 visionary egos is the true bottleneck of the Grand Solara Vision.
And that brings us back to the sheer, breathtaking audacity of the text we've been analyzing. The Grand Solara Vision is a literal, publicly published instruction manual for 100 of the most potent AI startups on Earth to bypass traditional venture capital structures, slide into some Twitter DMs, and organically fuse their cap tables using a gamified 30-30-30-10 split.
It is a roadmap to weaponize trust and coordination to build a trillion-dollar autonomous marketing infrastructure over the next decade.
It represents a radical departure from everything we assume about corporate growth.
Absolutely. Whether you are an investor deploying capital, a founder building a product, or simply an observer of market dynamics, This document serves as a theoretical blueprint for a new apex predator in the corporate ecosystem.
It's the conceptual shift from building an isolated, fragile startup to engineering a shared sun.
A shared sun, yes.
It forces us to entirely reevaluate the mechanisms of monopoly. And I want you to sit with this final thought as we wrap up today's deep dive.
It's a big one.
If this decentralized, trust-first, founder-led mega merger model can actually succeed, if they can genuinely coordinate 100 distinct entities to consolidate the global marketing infrastructure into a single, autonomous AI system, what other massive, fragmented industries are currently vulnerable to the exact same playbook?
There are so many.
Think about the operational friction in global supply chains. Think about the fragmentation in healthcare diagnostics. Think about decentralized finance. What other trillion-dollar sectors are just one well-placed Twitter DM away from being completely re-engineered by an AI collective?
The blueprint has been published. It is only a matter of time before someone attempts to execute it.
The mechanics are out there. Keep questioning the structures around you, keep exploring the fringes of these emerging technologies, and keep learning.